Perfect. Thank you. I'm Karen Spangler. I'm the policy director here at National Farm to School Network. I'm located in Washington, D.C., on the ancestral lands of the Piscataway, Nacotchtank people. And I'm really happy to present this webinar today in conjunction with our partners. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to share slides, and I might come on and off screen share to be able to see any questions in the chat or be able to see your faces better on Zoom. Wonderful. And so today we have our some of our farm to school partners from Hawaii sharing our successes, sharing successes and strategies in developing holistic policy. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by that. We're going to real up top at the beginning of this agenda, provide an overview of NFSN, the policy support that we can provide. We'll have special remarks from Senator Schatz from Hawaii. We'll have an overview of some of the recent Hawaii policy and a panel discussion that will be the majority of our time between the Hawaii partners about progress, strategies, lessons learned, and some time for Q&A. So of course, we want to make sure to have the chance to know what you would like to learn. So National Farm to School Network has a vision of where farm to school programs are an integral part of a just local and regional food system. And we believe that they can increase access to local food, to nutrition education, and that this improves children's health, strengthens family farms, family farmers, all kinds of growers and producers, and cultivates vibrant communities. And because of that, we want to ensure that all people, everybody who is involved in educating kids, getting food to our tables, has a chance to participate in a food system that benefits them. So our call to action for ourselves and for our food system is that 100% of communities will hold power in a racially just food system. And a lot needs to shift to get there. It's guiding all of our work, from policy advocacy to resource design to partnership cultivation. And we do this through the core elements of farm to school: education, procurement, school gardens, as some of the strategies, certainly not the only ones, but these are some of the core ways that we work together with partners in our network. And we think about farm to school as this triple win, right? So all the different ways that kids, growers, producers, everyone involved in the food system, and communities all win. And we'll talk about how policies can help that happen. We support that at Farm to School Network through our partnerships. So we are, as I said, a network, a national organization with 200 plus partner organizations doing the work every day in all 50 states, US territories, and DC, where I'm located. Our national staff, we work to support state policy, federal policy that advocates for our shared values. And we'll talk a little bit today about how policy can do that and has done that in Hawaii. So today's premise, this is a little bit about the growth of farm to school in the United States. And we would invite people to become partner organizations if this call to action speaks to you, the 100% of communities holding power in a racially just food system, and you want to join, be part of this network in our movement. So our core functions are to provide information, networking, and advocacy. And we do this through connecting people to resources, people to other people, and people to policy. So we're doing a little bit of that today through hearing about some of the strategies, the policies themselves that have worked in Hawaii, and that the progress of their work. We also love to connect people within our network to each other so they can learn from their peers and strengthen the overall growth of the movement, both in terms of success and in terms of equity. One of the ways we do this is through our state farm to school policy handbook. We had the pleasure of highlighting Hawaii as a case study in the 2018 version of the handbook. This gives examples of policies and the strategies that have helped them get there. So if you're looking for examples or resources in your own farm to school work, your own school food or local food policy work, it's an excellent resource, if I do say so myself, and we invite everybody to check it out. We also more recently have been tracking our policies happening during the current sessions that our partners and other in the farm to school space are working on. So keep an eye out in the new year as new state legislative sessions start for NFSN resources to help you track what's currently happening in your state on values-based procurement, expansion of school meals, farm to school policy in general. This is an example of some of the kind of resources that we can provide. We recently did a webinar workshop on candidate engagement, and regardless of party, before an election is a great time to engage candidates when they're asking for your vote. So that's one of the resources that we can provide, that we help our members and anyone in the farm to school movement with, in order to build our ability to advocate for these types of policies. And as I said, we're thinking about 100% of communities holding power in a racially just food system as the North Star, the call to action that we are aiming for with all of the work of policy, programs, and partnerships. We do that through thinking about our shared values. So economic justice, environmental justice, health impacts, racial equity, which is woven through all things, respect for workers and educators, and animal welfare. And so we know that farm to school policy can increase these impacts and improve these impacts rather, and reduce the harm of these impacts as well throughout our food system through the choices that are happening in the farm to school, farm to ECE realm. So today we're here to learn from our partners in Hawaii, highlighting the recent policy successes and strategies for developing holistic farm to school policy in Hawaii. And by holistic, we mean that it engages in multiple elements of those farm to school strategies, farm to school practices, and that it reflects the needs, values, and unique assets of the state, which you'll hear about from the speakers. So before we hand it over to our panelists, we have a brief message from Senator Brian Schatz, who's been a supporter of farm to school. Whoop, I did a little too much advancing there, who's been a supporter of farm to school on the federal level and wanted to express his support for your work.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for having me. When we invest in farm to school, we help kids to get the healthy meals that they need while supporting local farmers and fishers. Now we have to expand these programs. The Farm to School Act, which I co-sponsor, would develop new local partnerships, incorporate more indigenous foods, and add meals to early childhood, summer, and after-school programs. And I'm leading an effort to increase funding for the federal Farm to School program and reach more kids. Whether a Farm to School program provides a fresh meal, creates a school garden, or strengthens a family farm, our communities benefit. And so thank you for all that you're doing for these important programs. Let's keep working together to support them. Have a great event.
So I wanted to make sure that we get the chance to move on to our speakers. Before I do that, I wanted to thank the Johnson Ohana Foundation for helping to make today's event possible. And I wanted to hand it over to Natalie McKinney. So Natalie is with the Kokua Hawaii Foundation, one of our longtime farm to school partners. And in this has really been a key leader, a key champion in building the farm to school network in Hawaii. I'm really looking forward to hearing her lead our discussion with panelists today. I will go ahead and let her introduce our panelists, and I will share my screen again so that you can all see those slides as well.
Great, mahalo, Karen, and a huge mahalo to Senator Brian Schatz. He has been a farm to school champion since he was our lieutenant governor, and we're very honored to have him participate. Today, I will be the moderator for our Hawaii policy panel. I will give introductions a little later prior to the panel discussion, but today we will have Kelsey Amos, who is from the Purple Maia Foundation and their Food Plus policy program. Leidy Morgan Bernal from the University of Hawaii, the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, and Adriana Kaluhiokalani from the Oahu Agricultural and Conservation Association. So what I wanted to do first was just give, oh, and I'm sorry, my name is Natalie McKinney and I'm with the Kokua Hawaii Foundation. So what I would like to do first is just give you all a little snapshot of Hawaii. We are one statewide school district. We are the only statewide school district in the nation. We currently are servicing over 176,000 students. We do that through 258 public schools, 37 public charter schools, and this spans over 7 islands. One thing that I think is important to note, and not a lot of people know, is that in Hawaii, we import approximately 85% of all of our food. We also, within the Hawaii school district, we have one fixed menu. So you will hear as we continue on that poses quite a few challenges, which we will dive into a little bit later in the webinar, and why policy and advocacy has been really instrumental in helping us move the needle. So Kokua Hawaii Foundation, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded in 2003 by Kim and Jack Johnson, and we support environmental education in the schools and communities here in Hawaii. We have 5 main educational programs. They are the Aina in Schools program, which I'll get into a little bit, our 3Rs school program focusing on waste reduction, our plastic-free Hawaii program, which seeks to minimize single-use plastics here across our state. We provide field trip grants to schools statewide, as well as project grants to help schools with environmental and sustainability initiatives on their school campus. I would like to now just jump into the Aina in Schools program. Here in Hawaii, the word Aina means land or that which feeds us. And Kokua Hawaii Foundation utilizes that word as an acronym for actively integrating nutrition and agriculture in schools. The Aina in Schools program is a farm to school program that's dedicated to connecting children to their land, waters, and food to grow a healthier Hawaii. And we do that by addressing childhood health, fostering environmental stewardship, and supporting a healthy food system. So Aina in Schools is an example of a program that's working directly with schools. We started the program in 2006. And at the same time, charter schools throughout the state were doing aipono foods, single school garden programs were flourishing, and many island-based networks were starting, like the Hawaii Island School Garden Network. Ma'o Organic Farms was hosting a food sovereignty conference, and things were really starting to click statewide. We're starting to build a national and a Hawaii network, and helping to share all of the knowledge and resource as we were growing. Kokua Hawaii Foundation, our primary program was built on 6 integrated components. We have a school garden, nutrition and composting curriculum from K to 6. We have been in over 25 elementary schools on the island of Oahu, having over 1,000 volunteers and teachers leading over 24,000 lessons since that time. We've trained nearly 800 educators from over 250 schools and organizations statewide to utilize the curriculum. Our agricultural literacy component highlights chef visits. We've been deploying chefs to classrooms since 2013, as well as getting students out to farms, which we've been doing since 2016. Our family and community outreach component engages school communities through garden and party work days, Aina family nights, virtual events, and so much more. Our healthy food on campus component is really where we wanted to go hard on food. We found that this was one of the most challenging aspects of all of the components of our work, especially with being one large school district with one fixed menu, the amount of local food that is available. Many of our institutions are also competing with the hospitality industry here in Hawaii, where we see over 1 million visitors a year. So much of the local food is deployed to hotels and other opportunities for the visitors to participate. And we also, I think the size of our school district makes that very challenging, as well as the geographic distance between many of the islands. So at the same time that we were beginning to work on the school food front, there were many other groups on many other islands, as well as charter schools and nonprofits that were doing the same work. We began to galvanize and we began to work together. And just to give you all a little snapshot, so in 2007, the National Farm to School Network was established. In 2010, the USDA Farm to School program was established. That same year, in 2010, the Hawaii Farm to School and School Garden Hui was formally established. And one of our panelists will go into a lot more detail about that and the Hawaii School Garden program. And then in 2014, the Hawaii Farm to School Hui became a program of Hawaii Public Health Institute. Between 2010 and 2007, as we formalized our organizations, or as we formalized the Hui, the movement really began to grow, and our coalition really saw the value of policy and legislative work, which will be the focus of today's webinar. So today on our panel, we have 3 amazing women who are going to be sharing a little bit about their work around policy, around our food system here in Hawaii. So we'll have Kelsey Amos. She's the COO and co-founder of the Purple Maia Foundation. She serves as the program director of the Food Plus Policy Internship Program. She is of Japanese and European ancestry. She grew up in Waipi'ouka and is passionate about improving Hawaii's food system for future generations. Adriana Ja Kaluhiokalani. She is the outreach coordinator at Oahu Agriculture and Conservation Association. She was raised in Makapilo. She's a recent graduate of the University of Hawaii West Oahu, majoring in sustainability, community food systems, and political science. She's an experienced farmer and passionate advocate of Aloha and Malama Aina. She also completed the internship with the Hawaii Food Plus policy at Purple Maia. And at Oahu Agriculture and Conservation Association, she's focused on community outreach through in-person contact through the use of social media platforms. Leidy Morgan Bernal is the Oahu Farm to School coordinator as a junior extension agent with the University of Hawaii at Manoa. She joined the Farm to School movement in 2006 as the garden education coordinator at Kokua Hawaii Foundation. And in 2014, she became the founding coordinator of Hawaii Statewide Farm to School Network, the Hawaii Farm to School Hui. Leidy was raised on Oahu and is dedicated to advocate for the health of Keiki, Opio, and Aina, children, youth, and the land and waters that sustain and nourish us all. At this point, I'd like to pass it off to Leidy, who will be talking a little bit about our work as a Hui. Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako. Thank you very much, Natalie. It's great to be here with you all, and really excited to share about some tidbits about our journey of farm to school movement building in Hawaii, and particularly in the policy realm. If we could go to the next slide, please. I wanted to show you all this Hawaii version of the core elements of farm to school. So, we certainly are making an effort and have been to root this national movement here locally and, define what it looks like and what it means to us here. So still maintaining those 3 core elements of school gardens and farms, experiential food education, and then local school food. But you'll see here featured is the kalo plant on the left bottom. That's the most important plant here in Hawaii. And then poi on the right. So kalo is typically made into poi, which is the staple food of Hawaii. Next slide. This is an olelo no eau, which is a Hawaiian saying. We have many of them, and we're so blessed to have the wisdom of kupuna ancestors here. It reads, "Ua ola loko I ke aloha." Love is imperative to one's mental and physical well-being. And as a former garden educator, which is how I began this work, I discovered that love is alive in the garden with children. And I just found that really all of our answers are here. So I've, since that time, really have dedicated my work to making sure all students at every age have access, regular, equitable access to garden-based or Aina-based education. In Hawaii, this is a very grassroots movement because programs and island level networks formed on all islands. And you can see those here. We came together in 2010, as Natalie mentioned, as a statewide network. If you could make, there you go, one more click. And it is a program of Hawaii Public Health Institute. That's a nonprofit organization here. We have a website, you can learn more. But the power of our movement has come from local leaders who are very connected within their communities. And then those leaders coming together across the Pai Aina, we call it, the lands of Hawaii, to develop the shared visions, goals, objectives, and take action together. So let's take a little look at that. We are very much a public-private partnership with over 40 organizations and agencies involved. So I really wanted to point out the fact that the departments of education, health, agriculture, and the University of Hawaii have been at the table this whole time, along with all of these community partners and more. This is just, a small number of the partners that are actively working on the movement here. Next slide. So again, I am currently with the university. I previously was the statewide network coordinator under Hi-Fi. So I was an employee of the nonprofit organization. I was the statewide network coordinator, and I was also a registered lobbyist with our Hawaii State Legislature. These are really the main highlights in terms of what legislative wins we've had for Farm to School, starting in 2015 with the first big Farm to School Act. What that did was to establish a Farm to School program in our Hawaii Department of Agriculture, along with a coordinator. And this was a collective effort involving the lieutenant governor, obviously the legislature to pass the bill, and then many partners to begin implementing that. It brought Hawaii Department of Education to the table, and the Aina Pono Farm to School pilot program was launched, where we made lots of progress to regionalize menus and procurement through a series of pilot projects. The pandemic really had an effect on this program, which is why we're back to this one statewide menu. But of course, we're still here and making progress to pick up speed once again. That same year, there was a resolution passed. So, bills become law. Resolutions are more like a recommendation that the legislature makes. However, we took that resolution and made it into not just a paper or something that go on the shelf, but, a gathering of over 40 partners for 3 years to look at how do we create a framework of support for P20 or preschool through post-secondary agriculture education in Hawaii. And that's this report that you see on the right here to the 2019 legislature. And if it weren't for advocates in the movement keeping this report and all the work that went into it alive, it would also be a report on the shelf. But we, who have that historical knowledge of what has gone into this, continue to bring it forward. And work to implement the plan that was laid out. We were able to pass a bill in 2017 establishing Farm to School Month during the month of October for Hawaii in perpetuity. And another really big milestone for us was last year when the Farm to School program, it actually got moved out of the Department of Agriculture into our Department of Education, which means that, now our DOE, which is a statewide school district, has a Farm to School program. It has 5 holistic purposes involving improving student health, localizing school food, advancing garden and farm-based education for all students. So we made sure that it covered all 3 core elements of Farm to School. It set a goal of 30% local school food by 2030. And then that same year, the Farm to State Act passed, setting the goal, incremental goals up to 50% local by 2050. And that includes 4 other state entities along with the Department of Education, including the University of Hawaii. This past session, there were 18 Farm to School related bills introduced. One that we were advocating for was to fund a school garden specialist for our Department of Education. That did pass, and we're really excited to get that up and running. We've done lots of follow-up to make sure everything is going through with that. And even though about 85% of our public schools have gardens, there's been no dedicated person to date. So as a statewide network, we are looking at those needs and working to fill them through legislation when needed and outside of the legislature when possible. We did introduce or help to introduce a bill to have a coordinator established for P20 agriculture education. That one didn't pass this year, but we will be back to bring that to the table again. Can you still hear me? Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to get into some strategy ideas, really starting with community-based advocacy. As a state employee now, I can't actually go to the legislature and testify or speak to legislators about specific bills. State agency employees can educate, but we are very dependent on the community, nonprofit organizations and people to be the voice, right? To say what is needed, why, and to help push that through. So again, as the statewide network coordinator, I was a paid employee. I was also a registered lobbyist. So over time, that leads me to the second point, because I was at the legislature, I was able to get to know a lot of legislators. This is certainly true in Hawaii, and I think everywhere that relationships matter. People get to know you, they get to know the issue, right? So over the 7 years that I was helping to lead our policy efforts, I saw this understanding of Farm to School go from almost nothing to almost, complete across the board understanding and support. So it is definitely one of the issues that I think people like to get behind because it's win-win-win all around. So office staff typically are also very helpful. They can be a liaison for the legislator with you, but also these state departments of agriculture and education, they have policy staff that are in charge of taking the communications from their departments to the legislature. And they have been some of the biggest advocates for us as well. Events are really important. So that first big legislation that was passed in 2015 really came off of a statewide conference that we hosted in 2014, where we had Department of Agriculture on the panel. They announced that they were ready and willing to host a Farm to School program. And from there, we experienced success the following session. At the start of at the start of that session, we, as a statewide farm to school network, hosted a legislative breakfast at the Capitol. So we brought in, some delicious local foods. We had a panel of speakers, and we talked about the bills that were on the table for that session. The picture at the top right is a farm to school booth at the annual Ag Day at the Capitol that's hosted by the agriculture community here. So just having a presence, right? Being able to speak to people, meet them, and talk about what you're working on. Another really fun and effective thing that our network has done is to schedule one of our annual meetings of network leaders in conjunction with the opening of the legislative session. And so all of the members, we have our statement, we have handouts, and we go to the Capitol and meet with legislators. That's been really, really wonderful. And in general, being consistent, having coordinated efforts, and then knowing that it's a long-term commitment when it comes to passing laws. Next slide, please. Just a quick highlight of two of the working groups. So this is our statewide network's organizational structure, but two of them have played a particular role in the policy work. If you could go to the next slide. So we do have a legislation and policy working group. It meets monthly during the interim and then every other week during session. Lots of communication going on. We establish an annual advocacy calendar, which helps us remember every month of the year what we need to be doing, whether it's, seeking input from the entire network about policies that should be put forward, and then responding to bills when they are introduced. So we don't always lead on issues, which involves having a bill drafted and then asking for it to be introduced. But sometimes we have done that. During the session, which for Hawaii, it's January through May, this is sort of the process that we take. So it's working with someone who has the capacity to look through all the bills and say, this is relevant to farm to school. We bring that list to our working group and decide, what is our position, because we want to be present for anything related to the work that we're doing. Do we support, provide comments only, or oppose? We develop an online Google Sheets tracker and a flyer, and then sending calls for testimony through email and social media. That's something we've partnered with others to do. And then, having, again, that point of contact, whether it's one or more people whose job it is to be looking very closely at what's happening and then actively communicating with legislative offices to say, this bill needs to be scheduled, right? We know that they're so busy, there's so much going on. So you need someone who's watching and making sure things move forward and then cross the finish line. Next slide. Youth engagement is something we'll get into also today, which has been very, very powerful here. There's two more pictures I'd like to show just to illustrate what that has looked like in my experience. So again, as someone who's going to the legislature, I was quite used to, it's a strange thing. I don't know if others have experienced it, but legislators, they're looking down, they don't even look like they're listening to you when you're testifying. But what I noticed when I saw youth go up, and these are the FFA, the students of Hawaii, they had full attention of the legislators. There was applause. This was my first real awakening as to how important and powerful youth voice is in these spaces of decision making. And if you go to the next slide, this is on Zoom. So during the pandemic, we were very grateful that our legislature made the effort to move everything online. And that was a big deal for Hawaii because prior to the pandemic, if neighbor island people wanted to testify, they'd have to fly to Oahu, which was very prohibitive. So this finally got our legislature to move to the digital world. We had hearings online, and here in the highlighted box is one of our Youth Food Council members testifying during a hearing. She also had the full attention of every legislator, and it was just amazing to see their reaction to her showing up to speak in support of the bill. They just want to hear from youth. And so I will end there and pass it on to Natalie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Leidy. At this time, I'm going to invite our panelists, who are Kelsey and Ja and Leidy, and I'm going to be posing a few questions to them. We will have open question answer at the end of this short panel discussion. So if you do have a question, something that sparked while Leidy was speaking, go ahead and drop your question in the chat, and I'm going to try my best to try to get answers to your questions and try to provide as much engagement as possible. I know that in Hawaii, it's very important. Not only are we connected to the place, the connection of our people is very important, and all of the work that we do is through this lens of taking care of each other and taking care of the land. And so I would like to ask Ja if she would share a little bit about our values of Aina and how that influences the work that we are all doing here. Ja?
Thank you, Natalie. I don't know if we can share that slide. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just to give you like a kind of a framework of what's really like what it is, I have this Olelo no Eau, or a Hawaiian proverb, and it says, He ali'i ka Aina, he kawa ke kanaka. And this translates into the land is chief, the human is but a servant. So with this Olelo no Eau, it's a reminder of our kuleana, or our responsibility or privilege we have as people to serve to Aina, our land, as well as the reassurance that in return, Aina will care for us, feed us, and provide for our needs. And this stewardship mentality also helps to cohesively rebuild that relationship between culture and to continually take steps, the right steps in transforming the food system of Hawaii.
Mahalo, Ja. As I shared earlier, Ja is a recent graduate from the University of Hawaii at Manoa in a burgeoning sustainable food systems program. And we're very excited to have youth voice uprising here in Hawaii. It's been an exciting thing, as Leidy and I can attest to. And so, and Leidy spoke to the Hawaii Youth Food Council and how they have been engaged in youth advocacy. And what I'd like to do is invite all three panelists to share a little bit about what strategies they're using to engage youth in advocacy, and maybe share an example of implementation in the work that they're doing. And I'd like to start with Kelsey. She's a founding member of the Purple Maia Foundation and started the Food Policy Plus group. Kelsey?
Sure. Thanks, Natalie. Can everyone hear me? So yeah, I think, thank you, Leidy, for laying that all out. I continue to learn more and more about the Farm to School network here and like the long-term movement that you guys have led to get these things passed. Hawaii Food Plus Policy is a much more recent organization, or well, program within Purple Maia Foundation that does, it's basically an internship program for young adults, so kind of on the older spectrum of youth, right? But college students and those in their, below 28 who may or may not be in college or who may be farming, to basically jump into and learn about the legislative process as it relates to food systems policy. So that's the lens that we look at it through. We're tracking bills related to food system policy. And so we kind of quickly got synced up with the Farm to School network and everything you guys have been doing. And, youth care about farm to school. I think a lot of them, it's interesting. So we originally started, and we still continue to collaborate with the Sustainable Community Food Systems department, which is a program within the University of Hawaii West Oahu it's where Ja got her degree, and it gives students an amazing college experience focusing on learning about what is a sustainable community food system and how do we bring that about. So working with those students who had all that knowledge and passion already about improving the food system, and then just throwing them into applying that knowledge as advocates for the first time, even though they hadn't done it before, they'd never talked to a legislator, they didn't know how a bill becomes a law when they first come into it, right? And UH West Oahu, it's a 4-year degree college, but it's a little bit, it serves a lot of non-traditional students. So we actually had a mix of kind of traditional students who are in their, who are 2021, went straight from high school into college, and then some non-traditional students who are more adults or who went to school kind of in their later 20s or 30s or even 40s. So there's a mix there. And I think the students who were younger, they appreciated farm to school because they had, that was their experience as students, as youth going through school here in Hawaii and eating the cafeteria food, right? And then some of the older students, the non-traditional ones, appreciated it because a lot of them were parents actually. And so they were, they were kind of more actually in the role of parent advocates for farm to school. So farm to school quickly became a focus area for us. And I guess just what I'll say about strategies for engaging college students, and I think that this could work with high school students as well. That's a growth area for us, is reaching down the grade levels into high school students are really busy, actually. It's hard to get them to do an internship with us. But I think seeing students from a strength-based perspective is the thing. And it actually really helps that Food Plus was kind of a new frontier. Our Purple Maya Foundation is actually largely focused on technology education, but we define it as educating and empowering the next generation of problem solvers. So problem solving is not just technology innovation, it's also has to interface with government and policy and these other levers that shape our society. So Food Plus was a little bit of a jump for me personally, and that actually was the best blessing when we did it the first time around, because I was forced to see the interns that I was working with and the youth that I was working with from a strengths-based perspective, because we were kind of just all in it together, figuring it out. And it's actually gotten harder to run the internship in subsequent years because, I know more, and there's a little bit more of an expectation, from youth who are used to school, used to not like a work and problem solving together context. They're used to being like, explain this to me. There's kind of more of an expectation of lay it out for me and tell me what to do, versus trying to get out of that and frame it as an internship, as a job, as something that I don't know all the answers, and so we're going to problem solve this together. That's kind of the ethos that we try to cultivate. And I think that really allows students and youth to, as long as it's something that they care about. So we bring in the ones, right, who are interested in the food system, interested in farm to school. That's a passion area for them already. And then they're primed and set and empowered to like figure out this thorny, confusing, bureaucratic process of the legislative system. And they come out of that with a lot more confidence in their ability to navigate that in the future, if or when they need to, continuing in the farm to school movement or in other areas of agriculture policy, or just in other areas of community engagement with the legislative process. So I don't know how much time I just spoke for, but I'll leave it there and let some of the other folks go, but I am happy to share any more later on for Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Kelsey. John, I'm going to pass it off to you. Could you share strategies to engage youth in advocacy and provide an example of implementation?
Yeah, so I was actually one of the first round of interns for the Food Plus policy with Purple Maya. And I feel like one of the main strategies that we use to help engage youth in advocacy was actually social media. And I think that was like my strong point in that, one of my strong points in that program. So, and when you think about social media, it's a free platform. So anybody can use it and anybody can go and, access those things. And since we're living more in like a tech-based world, we should, what I believe is a main strategy is that we should connect that that tech-based world, that social media, and then create viral and valuable content. But this should be content based off of connection with people and Aina, so people and land. But then within that connection, we're also understanding and being cohesive with the future, but also using the knowledge from the past. So that's what I feel like is one of the strategies that we could use.
Mahalo, Ja. Lady, I posed the same question to you.
Thank you. I will speak more about the Hawaii Youth Food Council. So that was founded as a collective of different organizations coming together and connected with the Farm to School Hui in 2019. And we launched at the very beginning of 2020. We had one in-person gathering of our founding 5 high school youth members and have been mostly online since then, but the council continues to thrive. We were able to bring on a dedicated coordinator of the Hawaii Youth Food Council. That's Olivia Whittemore. She's on the call here. And so this is a council of typically, 8 to 12 high school youth. They go through an application process and interviews, but they're interested in food systems, right? They want to make a change. Only as of this past session was the first time we really brought them on into the legislative space. So learning about the process of developing bills and how to advocate for them. And then, coming to hearings in the virtual setting to testify. And so that's been in a really important way that we're engaging, again, this high school level. So Food Plus Policy has been higher education. It's great. I'm really excited about the partnership that's been developed between Hawaii Youth Food Council and Food Plus Policy, and just to see that grow, particularly when it comes to policy advocacy. I also brought in the Hawaii FFA, Future Farmers of America. They are another important entity, involving young people at the high school and also middle school age, including the public speaking element that is very much a part of FFA. So I think there's just so much potential to bring these groups together, right, to involve youth in the process.
Thank you all so much for sharing about our youth engagement here in Hawaii. I know personally, it's been very exciting to watch all of this bubble up and rise to the top. I love seeing the blue jackets at the Capitol. It really gives me chicken skin. Moving to all of the work that we have done as a collective from the very early stages, Lady, which you have been a part of, from Nancy Redfeather on Hawaii Island, and then us moving into having partners all across now, the Aina, and including a tech foundation like Purple Maia. What are some of the lessons that we have learned over time that you think would be valuable to share with our viewers?
Thank you, Natalie. So just to reiterate on a couple of things I mentioned, at one point in our history of our movement, we were thinking to institutionalize, right? We wanted to put positions and programs within the government agencies for sustainability. But I think there was this aha moment that it has to continue to be a public-private nonprofit partnership. We need the institutionalization within government, but we also very much need community-based organizations, networks, and advocates. So again, having paid staff who are, tapped into the legislative process has been part of what has been needed for us here and has worked well. And then in terms of our statewide network, we began quite informally. So we would gather, share updates, get to know each other, right? What's happening in your area. But at one point there was a call to formalize our network. And so we said we need a way to organize our structure and make decisions. And one of our members who's on this call, Dr. Ko Ming Wei, she brought to us Sociocracy. I like to call it an advanced form of democracy. And none of us knew what that was at the time, but our leadership team was trained in Sociocracy. And we hired a consultant and facilitator to help roll locally to help us roll it out. So over the last about 4 or 5 years, we have been able to say, this is how we structure ourselves, and this is how we make decisions. So that has fed into this process of policy development and advocacy in the way that we can, more formally say, these are our priorities, and this is what we agree on. It's a consent-based decision-making process. So if you're looking for a way to formalize, your groups, I think Sociocracy is definitely something to look into. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Leidy. Yes, Sociocracy, we use that often. And, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And what Sociocracy does is give everyone a voice. And so because we are a network of a variety of different organizations and stakeholders, we want to ensure that everyone has a voice at the table. So utilization of this tool has been instrumental in our growth and ensuring that we are representing all voices from across our Aina. Ja, I'm going to go to you next. What are some lessons that you've learned in doing this work? I know you're young, and so I just want to know what are some things that you can share with us?
Well, one of the things that I feel like when it comes to like policy work or legislative work, since I got to see like one full season of legislative work from like January till I believe April, it helped me to understand how to advocate and actually understand how it works. And then also helping my family members. So some of my family members are also working on their bachelor's, and they had to advocate for policies in public health. And so I helped her with how to go onto the legislative site, how to make your account, how to access the bills, the House bills, the Senate bills. And then overall, I feel like doing this work also helps you to learn how to keep track, always have your testimony ready when you're advocating for policy, and then know who's advocating for those certain bills as well. Stay close to the fire in the sense where it's like you're continuously tracking what is happening. And then also understand and don't be discouraged if your bill doesn't make it to law, because I feel like just there's so much simultaneously work, like so much work outside of the bill race that's happening in these nonprofit organizations, in these grassroots organizations. So don't get discouraged while you're doing it. So
Mahalo. I see actually quite a few of Ja's family members on this Zoom. So I think that that's awesome. And I just want to remind everyone that everyone here is an eater. So we are all participating in the food system. And so the more work that you can do at home and just helping to talk story and share with your family, the more we all know collectively, the more impact that we can make. Kelsey, describe how access to the legislative process is mobilizing Gen Z.
Yeah, well, so that's kind of what, I don't even know what generation you identify as, but as you were saying earlier, right, and as I was kind of emphasizing before, like looking at youth from a strength-based focus rather than a deficit lens. Gen Z comes with lots of skills in technology, social media, and kind of, I think sort of the right attitude in terms of like kind of being ready to demand that these processes make sense and are accessible. And, capital.hawaii.gov, which is our legislative, our capital's website where you would log in to provide testimony, was starting to look a little like, Web 2.0 or something. It recently was updated. And I'm hoping for more of that kind of thing because, that's the kind of piece that like, you go in and you're like, wait, where is my Zoom link to give live testimony? Why is this system so clunky? And, there's kind of a seamlessness that we all kind of desire and that Gen Z especially, I think, kind of demands. And I think that that's a good thing. One of the exciting things we're able to do is try to like rapidly use different tools, kind of utilize, as in use them for not their original intended purpose, such as Trello. So this is actually an idea from another relatively young advocate, Trello, which is actually a project management system. We use that to track the process of bills as they move through the legislature. So you can kind of visually see the steps. So it's really good for folks who, like me, kind of think visually. And that's just something that, young people are kind of able to rapidly adapt to and figure out how to use and sort of run with. So yeah, I see a lot of, I'm now having to keep up. I think our next frontier is definitely TikTok, and I'm ready to go there, or I'm ready for somebody to take me there this session out of the group of interns. I think it's coming based on my initial interviews with them and what their interests are. So yeah, and it keeps it fun and engaging, right? Because policy can be so boring if you're even for those of us who care a lot about it. Sometimes it's like bill numbers and legal language, and so all the creative energy that youth can bring to these issues, I think I really value.
Thank you so much. We've even seen teachers in the Department of Education assign students to track bills as part of some of their coursework, which is exciting that in Hawaii we have that platform and ability to do that. We're gonna just go into this last round of this, the panel, and then we'll get into question and answers. We're just gonna do a lightning round. And I'm gonna ask, what are the goals, or what does our future look like? What are the goals here in Hawaii for farm to school and the great policy work that we're doing? Lydie, I'll start with you.
Great. So as I mentioned, I transitioned out of my statewide network role with Hawaii Public Health Institute. Now I'm the Oahu Farm to School Coordinator, Junior Extension Agent with the University of Hawaii. So no longer in the policy advocacy realm. I consider myself to be in the implementation realm. So it's really exciting to take what we've passed at the legislature that are now in our Hawaii revised statutes and let everyone know that this has happened, and work together on what's next. So it's been a really interesting transition for me to say, what does it look like to now implement these laws that we've helped to pass? So in particular, that's the Hawaii Farm to School program in the DOE. And again, equitable, regular access for all students to local healthy school food and Aina-based education at every level. We have a ways to go to get there, and that's what I'll be working on. And then making sure we get the school garden specialist position opened for hiring. That will be coming on sometime in the spring, but it has, again, taken people following up to make sure these things are happening. So I'm looking forward to seeing those come to fruition. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Lydie. Kelsey, what are your goals for the future?
My goals for in the Food Plus realm, I think the conversation is going to shift into implementation, because now we have these wonderful goals about 30% by 2030 and 50% by 2050. And so the conversations I'm hearing now are about kind of decentralizing the approach to school food, like Natalie was explaining very well earlier, with one school system and one menu for the entire state every day. It really is something that I think we're going to have to address, and there's so much energy around it, right? I'll mention, I was just at the Youth Climate Forum hosting a regenerative agriculture working group with Liv over there from the Hawaii Youth Food Council, and we had a participant in there who was asking about, how can I get locally grown food from my community into the elementary school where I live, like on that scale. And Liv was talking through with her, like what the process and structure of everything is that is holding up that kind of thing. So I think that that's something that community members are going to demand in different communities at that smaller scale, and that we're going to have to work to address as advocates.
Thank you so much. Ja, what does your future look like?
So I wanted to reference an article that I actually wrote, a paper for my Hawaii Food Plus Policy internship. The paper is by Gail Finstra. It's called Creating Space for Sustainable Food Systems, Lessons from Field, Agriculture, and Human Values. So in this article, it talks about 4 different types of spaces that we need to create a different to create that sustainable food system that we yearn for, that we want. So these 4 spaces are: 1, social. So we need a social space or an actual setting for us to be open to talking about the actual problems that are happening. We need political space. And within this political space, we have to be working towards institutionalizing sustainable food systems through local food policies. Intellectual space, which means we need to preserve in bringing multiple disciplines and community perspectives together. So we need our Hawaiian practitioners and we need our policy advocates working cohesively. And then lastly, economic space. And within economic space, we need to focus on recirculating local financial capital as the key element in creating this successful community food system.
Mahalo. All right, so that concludes the formal part of our presentation. I'm going to be moderating a question and answer here. I already see 2 questions that are in the chat. Our first question is about Act 175 and reference to the 30% local by 2030. And Ken asked, what progress has been made toward the 30% goal so far? Lighty, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about our lack of data collection in the DOE?
Yes. And as mentioned, there was quite a bit of progress made prior to 2020. When the pandemic happened, we lost our farm to school coordinator in the DOE. He left the DOE for another job. Thankfully, he's still with us, but in a different role. We also had a turnover of the school food services branch director and his boss as well. So a lot of that historical knowledge of the progress was made for farm to school was lost with them. And so we still don't have a farm to school coordinator in our DOE. I think that's a job opening that we can circulate once again. We would love folks to consider that if you have the desire and skills to help in that space. So we have a bit of a lack of capacity at the DOE right now. However, I know I can speak personally as focusing on Oahu that we're starting to work more at the district or complex area level. So that's a grouping of schools, about 30 schools versus, close to 300 that we're going to actually look at changing menus and doing local procurement more at the regional scale. So I think, that's really the approach. Natalie mentioned lack of data. One of the issues that was being worked on pre-COVID was getting an updated inventory and digital ordering system in order to track the % of local food. So even that is just now being addressed. But Natalie, did you want to add anything in particular?
Oh, no, just that. So when we first started doing this work, Kokua Hawaii Foundation got a specialty crop block grant from the Department of Agriculture, USDA, and we reported out that we were going to report back how much local was being purchased by distributors. And as we worked through the process, we realized that distributors they would just say USA when labeling where produce was coming from, and Hawaii was part of USA. And so we started with nothing, how do we even transform this system? And so we finally got the distributors to be able to start asking state is it coming from Hawaii? At the current time, we still sometimes don't know if it's coming from a certain island. And most of the aggregation is happening through distributors through the Department of Education. And so a lot of that tracking has been challenging, to say the least. Let's see. Okay, I have, Mingwei Ko, Dr. Mingwei, she did drop a link to the report that the Department of Education submitted to the legislature, which they're required to do about their goal in meeting the 30 by 30. So if anyone wants to dig into that, that's an interesting document. It's very brief, but it does highlight some of the challenges that they're facing. We do have a new governor, and that is also very exciting. We have a new chair of the Department of Agriculture, and she is someone who has been with us in the trenches with the Hawaii Farm to School Hui, and has been a tremendous advocate. I personally am very excited for our future, especially around farm to school, and increasing and highlighting small and local farms. Alicia, she asked about when hearing from all voices, working with DPS in conjunction with using some of the Aina there to create mala, and having Pa'ahau there to Kokua with farming and bringing sustainable food to the community. Do any of our panels, would they like to speak to any of the small farm agricultural plots that are popping up at some not so, yeah. Lighty, do you have any thoughts? Or
That's Department of Public Safety, yeah?
yeah. Mhm.
Great. I'm not personally connected at this time, but I've heard that quite a bit of food growing has started to happen in adult and youth correctional facilities here in Hawaii. And does anyone else have more of an update on that?
I'm wishing that I did. I think I heard about a project at WCCC, the women's facility, where they're growing something, and that's, you know, a very positive program. I do think the issue of just access to land, like, you know, I think we do have to think creatively, like, was it Alicia that asked about that? I think that's an important, and that's a good idea and an important question. The other thing that I'm hearing from farmers is that access to land is so difficult. So, I mean, there's changes within the Department of Agriculture that could alleviate that, but we can also think about using lands on these institutions in a way that would benefit the people in the institutions, whether those are schools or prisons or hospitals, et cetera. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Great, and thank you, Lighty. So Act 176, which is a sister law to Act 175, is around state agencies and local purchasing. And so Lighty just reminded us that DPS is one of 5 state agencies that have been named in the Farm to School Act 175. And I just want to say, I actually have purchased lettuce from the Women's Correctional Facility at Foodland. The Outdoor Circle actually helps with that program. I also have had the pleasure of visiting the Waiava Men's Correctional Facility, where they have a 7-acre farm and are producing a tremendous amount of food. They are waiting to be GAP certified. I see Kevin on this call. And so at this time, their food has not made it into circulation. They are able to do donations, but they have aquaponics, they have hydroponics, they are growing kalo, and the full 7 acres is in beautiful production. And so I think that there are a lot of opportunities here within our state agencies to really begin to shine the light on some of these programs that have been in existence and been flying under the radar for so long. I don't see any more questions that are in the chat. I'm happy to, if anyone has a question, I think I'll take one last question here. If anyone wants to raise their hand or unmute themselves, I'd be happy to facilitate answering any of your questions.
Natalie, I'll defer to our participants, but if there's questions, but I did want to make sure to highlight the Fix Your Food hashtag if we have time to hear it all about that. Sounds like that was a really fun way to try and activate people around testimony.
Yeah, I missed that. Who can speak to that, please?
Sure. Yeah. So that came up. That wasn't in your year, Ja. That was something we did the second year because it was so difficult cross-referencing like newsletter clicks to who actually submitted testimony. And actually hashtags, if you recall, when they first came out in Twitter, they weren't like hyperlinks. They were just an easy way to do a Control F search for a word because it had that hashtag on the front of it. So you weren't going to get like any other usages of that word. So that was just something that we started to promote in our newsletters and in our social media, saying, hey, go testify, use hashtag fix our food system. And probably not everyone did that, but that was an easy way for us to see and track our impact and kind of get a sense of who was hearing us and actually taking action. Yeah, so that was a fun, that's what I mean about sort of fun and creative ways using technology or little hacks to kind of ease the burden of participating in the legislative process as members of the public, because it is that there are significant barriers that turn people off and send them away. So things we can do to make it fun and at the same time make things easier for ourselves.
Mahalo, Kelsey. Well, on behalf of the Hawaii Farm to School Hui Kokua Hawaii Foundation and all of us here in the Aina of Hawaii, we want to thank you all for joining us. I'd like to thank Lydie Morgan Bernal, Kelsey Amos, Ja. Thank you so much. Our future looks so bright, and I just want to pass it off back to Karen. And thank you for having us. This was really enjoyable.
Thank you. I'm so excited to hear from the panelists and today, and thank you to Natalie for moderating. As you mentioned, part of our role at National Farm to School Network is to elevate the work like this that is happening in Hawaii and assist with how your state, territory, DC can translate these kind of strategies to the work that's happening where you are and connect with others in your community. So if you're not a partner organization already, I encourage you to go to farmtoschool.org and check out our resources and the upcoming events like these that we have. So thank you again to all of our panelists, both for your work today and for your work ongoing. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.